Secret in Their Eyes, which is a remake of the Argentinian film, which in 2010 won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, beating Michael Haneke's White Ribbon and Jacques Audiard's A Prophet. Wrongly so, incidentally, because I think that White Ribbon really should have won that year. But there we go. A much liked and much admired film, and this now English language remake is obvious. I'd say from the outset, it's something that if you're a big fan of the original, you're not going to be impressed by the remake. There's nothing in here that's going to win you over. However, again, this is a film which has been quite badly reviewed. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's flawed. The story is it moves the action from 70s Argentina, where the original is rooted anyway, to 21st century America. We open with Chiwetel Ejiofor's former FBI agent, Ray, scanning images on a computer. And there's a lovely opening scene in which you can see, we look at him through the computer screen. There are these images of these faces. The faces are reflected in his glasses. The glasses are reflected in the computer screen. It's kind of all about visuals. Then he finds a face that he recognizes. He then goes back to find Nicole Kidman's district attorney to say, look, I need you to open up this case again, which is from 13 years ago. And while he's trying to get her to open up the case, in comes Julia Roberts. And Julia Roberts is the sort of the third leg of this very sort of strange in which they are all tied up in a case that happened 13 years ago that has remained unresolved and has caused all of them ongoing anguish.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You?
No, I'm fine. I was just congratulating. Well, you made chief investigator, right? So I'm looking at royalty here. You still living in Moorpark?
Yes. It's quiet out there. I like the quiet. You still bureau?
No, I went private sector. Badge kind of lost its charm for me.
I'll let you too.
No. Stay, please. This is about you. I found him, Jess. I found Martin.
So what he thinks he's done is he's found the person from the case from 13 years ago. And we flash back to 13 years ago, which is 2002, in the wake of 9/11, when we first see Chiwetel Ejiofor's FBI investigator meeting Deputy DA Nicole Kidman. He is working alongside Julia Roberts' character. They then have they're staking out a mosque because they're involved in counter-terrorism, and there is a murder in which they find themselves personally embroiled. And the film then flips backwards and forwards between the two time periods, between 2002 and roughly 2015. And firstly, I mean, it's an interesting idea to try and sort of take the political situation of the original and transpose it to the post-9/11 situation in America. It doesn't quite work. It's an interesting idea. This is written and directed by Billy Ray, who wrote the screenplay for Captain Phillips and directed Shattered Glass, which, he does understand sort of, twisty thrillers. So it doesn't quite work, but it's a kind of bold attempt. What does work, I think, is Chiwetel Ejiofor's character carries an awful lot of the weight of the narrative, and a lot of the narrative, the level of contrivance in it is enormous. And you kind of partly get beyond that because you believe in Chiwetel Ejiofor's character. What you don't believe in is the putative romance between him and Nicole Kidman, which is sort of one of the driving forces of the film, and which refers back very specifically to one of the driving forces of the original, which is to do with loneliness and lost love and the persistence of passion. However, the real standout, and what they have done is that they've realigned the nature of the murder tragedy. The real standout is Julia Roberts, who I thought was terrific. She's basically playing a character who is dealing with an extraordinary burden of grief, who is somebody whose the reason for their life has been taken away, and they have therefore become somebody who is consumed with having to live with this unsolved issue. And I thought she did it really well. The character that she plays was originally written for a man, which she'd done, and she said, I'll do it if you rewrite it as a woman's role, which they did. And she's the real ace card. And although the film itself is rather uneven. And although there are things in it, there are some terribly hackneyed dialogue, some terribly cliched dialogue. Alfred Molina, God, I hope you're wrong about this. And Alfred Molina's accent as well, which is very odd, which is a bit of the Ray Winston's, that he's kind of American, but as he gets cross, his accent flies back across the Atlantic and ends up over here, depending on how angry he is. And there's also a lot of sort of business. Julia Roberts, Nicole Kidman's character, has got this thing that she fidgets with something in her fingers to indicate anxiety, and then she passes that fidgety thing on to Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, and we follow it very, very. So there's a lot of it that's clunky, and a lot of it that doesn't work, and a lot of it in terms of narrative contrivance doesn't make sense. But it is a great credit, firstly, to Chiwetel Ejiofor, who I think manages to keep the sort of the central line through the film. I love him as a performer. I think he's a really, really easy actor to watch because you believe in him. I think he's got that classic thing about you believe in what he's doing, the same way as Emma Thompson, actually. You just trust those characters. But largely worth the price of admission for Julia Roberts' performance, because I thought she was terrific. I thought she did a really good job. I think some people have dismissed it as saying, well, she's just doing that thing about looking ostentatiously bedraggled, which was something. I think it's absolute nonsense. I think what she does is she plays the two sides of the character from 2002, from 2013. There's one scene in it in which the contrivance is unbelievable, and yet they managed to get away with it because of the strength of her performance. I mean, there was one scene in it when you literally think this is working because that actor is doing that well enough that it's convincing me, even though I know that this is nonsense, that it doesn't add up. So if you're a fan of the original, it's not anything that's going to surpass that. And I'm not surprised that it's got some sort of fairly sniffy reviews. It's not great, but what it is a perfectly passable multiplex thriller with a very, very good performance by Julia Roberts.